There's a tiny island in the Caribbean that most people couldn't find on a map. It has no army, no oil, no factories, no skyscrapers. The entire island could fit inside a mid-sized American city, and yet, somehow, this place holds more money than Germany, France, and Japan combined. We're not talking about a thriving economy. We're not talking about a Silicon Valley of the tropics. We're talking about a sun-soaked, palm tree-covered secret that the world's richest corporations, banks, and billionaires have been using for decades to make their money disappear legally. The island is called the Cayman Islands, and this is the story of how a place with no income tax, no corporate tax, and barely 70,000 people became the financial capital of the planet. But to understand how it got there, you have to go back to a storm. 1794. 7 ships full of British sailors and Jamaican colonists wrecked off the coast of Grand Cayman during a violent storm. Local islanders risked their lives to save them. The sailors survived. The ships didn't. Legend has it that one of those sailors was a member of the British royal family, and as a thank you, the Crown granted the Cayman Islands a special promise. You will never be taxed. Not now, not ever. It sounds like a fairy tale. Historians debate whether it's even fully true. But what happened next? That part is completely real. For the next 150 years, the Cayman Islands were quiet, tiny, forgotten, a blip in the Caribbean Sea with no economy worth mentioning. Then the 1960s arrived, and everything changed. Here's where the story gets interesting. After World War II, the United States became the financial center of the world. Banks were lending money everywhere. Corporations were expanding everywhere. And governments, naturally, were taxing everything. American companies started asking a dangerous question. What if we could do business somewhere that doesn't tax us at all? Someone looked at a map. Someone pointed at the Cayman Islands. And just like that, the race began. In 1966, the Cayman Islands passed a set of laws unlike anything in the world. No income tax, no corporate tax, no capital gains tax, and perhaps most importantly, total secrecy. Banks didn't have to tell anyone who their clients were or where the money came from. It was a locked vault with a welcome mat at the front door. Within a decade, the banks arrived. American banks, European banks, investment firms, law offices. They didn't come to serve the 10,000 locals. They came because the Cayman Islands had turned itself into something the financial world had never seen before. A perfectly legal place to make money disappear from tax collectors back home. Think of it this way. Imagine you run a massive company. You make $1 billion in profit in the United States. Normally, you pay hundreds of millions in taxes. But what if you could set up a tiny office in the Cayman Islands, officially move your profits there on paper, and suddenly owe almost nothing? That's not a crime. That's a strategy. And it's exactly what some of the biggest companies in the world started doing. By the 1980s, the Cayman Islands had become something extraordinary. A country of 20,000 people that somehow had more registered companies than actual citizens, more bank accounts than people, more lawyers per capita than almost anywhere on Earth. The economy wasn't built on tourism or fishing. It was built on paperwork, on secrecy, on the art of making billions vanish into the warm Caribbean air. Now here's the twist most people don't see coming. The Cayman Islands didn't hide stolen money. They didn't run some shadowy criminal operation on a beach somewhere. Everything they did was completely legal. That's what made it genius, and what made it so infuriating to everyone else. Here's how it worked. A massive tech company earns $10 billion in profit across Europe. The moment that profit lands in a European country, that country taxes it. But what if that company had already set up a subsidiary in the Cayman Islands? What if, on paper, the intellectual property behind the company's software was technically owned by that tiny island office with 2 employees and a shared printer? Suddenly, the European profit gets paid as a licensing fee to the Cayman office. The money lands in the Caymans. The Caymans charge 0 tax. The company keeps almost everything. Governments around the world watched this happening for decades and couldn't stop it because it wasn't against the rules. The Cayman Islands had found a loophole in the entire global financial system and quietly built a country inside it. By the 1990s, the scale had become almost impossible to believe. Hedge funds managing hundreds of billions were registered there. The biggest banks in the world had Cayman offices. Investment vehicles nobody had ever heard of were funneling money through the island on a daily basis. And then came one address that said it all. Ugland House, a modest 5-story office building in Georgetown, the capital of the Cayman Islands. On paper, 18,000 companies were registered to that single address. 18,000. A senator named Barack Obama once called it either the biggest building in the world or the biggest tax scam in the world. The building, for the record, is not particularly large, and it keeps going. Today, the Cayman Islands is the 5th largest financial center on Earth. More than $3 trillion sits in Cayman bank accounts. Nearly every major hedge fund in America is legally domiciled there. The Cayman Islands holds more U.S. Treasury bonds than most actual countries. Some estimates say nearly half of all offshore money in the world flows through this one tiny island. But here's the question nobody asks loudly enough. Where did all that money come from? Whose money is it? And who actually gets hurt? This is where the story changes tone. When a massive corporation routes its profits through the Cayman Islands and pays 0 tax, that money doesn't just disappear into the ocean. It disappears from somewhere specific. It disappears from the schools that needed funding, the hospitals that needed equipment, the roads that needed repairs, the governments that had to raise taxes on regular workers to make up the difference. The system isn't just about rich companies getting richer. It's about who picks up the bill. And the answer, almost every time, is the people who can't afford a Cayman Islands office. Studies suggest that tax havens cost governments around the world somewhere between $500 billion and $600 billion every single year. Not stolen, not laundered, just quietly, legally moved to a place where taxes don't reach. And the countries that lose the most, often the ones that can least afford it, developing nations, smaller economies. Places where that missing tax money would have meant everything. The Cayman Islands didn't set out to rob the world. They set out to survive. A tiny island with no resources, no agriculture worth mentioning, no industry, just a British colonial promise of no taxes and the creativity to turn that into an empire. In a strange way, it's one of the most brilliant economic stories ever told. But brilliant doesn't mean harmless. The world has started to push back. After the 2008 financial crisis, when governments were desperate for revenue and furious at the financial system, the pressure on tax havens exploded. The U.S. passed a law called FATCA, forcing foreign banks to report American clients or face massive penalties. The EU started blacklisting jurisdictions that didn't cooperate. The OECD, a club of wealthy nations, began pushing for a global minimum tax of 15%, so that no matter where a company officially registered its profits, it would owe at least something. The Cayman Islands adapted. They tightened rules. They added transparency requirements. They started sharing some information with foreign governments. They weren't going to go down without a fight. And truthfully, they haven't gone down at all.